I've been gearing up to talk about the book of Job, but I've been honestly struggling a lot with it because I've struggled with the story and just what Job went through and the reason for it, or what I thought was the reason, the way I understood the reason to be. So I'm still exploring this one, and I'm going to really appreciate your comments on this and your perspective on this. So I'm going to share with you what I've learned and what I've taken away from this story. And again, I'm going to be perfectly honest, I'm still struggling with it, and I'm just praying that, God will give me the comfort with this story that I know that it's actually meant to be. So here we go. The story of Job, found in the Old Testament, is a absolutely profound account of suffering, faith, and restoration. So Job was a wealthy and righteous man who just deeply honored God. And as the story goes, Satan sees this and challenges God, suggesting that Job's faithfulness was only due to his blessings. So to test Job's integrity, God allowed Satan to afflict him. This is where we all struggle with it, right? In a series of just devastating events, Job lost his children, his wealth, and he was covered in painful sores. As he sits in the ashes grieving, his 3 friends come to comfort him. But instead of helping him, they begin to argue with him, suggesting that his suffering must be punishment for some sin. Job, however, maintains his innocence. He questions why God would allow such suffering. Eventually, God answers him out of a whirlwind, and in this moment, he reveals his immense power and his sovereignty. And now, while God didn't provide direct answers to Job's questions, he reminded Job of the limits of human understanding compared to divine wisdom. So Job is humbled by this, and he acknowledges God's greatness and repents for doubting his plans. As we know, in the end, God restores Job's fortunes, and he grants him more children, and he gets like twice as much as he had before. And he lived this long, very blessed life. So what exactly are the lessons here? From what I gather and what I've read, the story teaches us lessons about the mystery of suffering and the importance of faith and God's power to restore and redeem. He learned that suffering isn't always the result of sin, and this was a huge takeaway for me. One of the biggest lessons from Job is that suffering doesn't always mean that we've done something wrong, and I know we have all thought that at one time or another, right? Job was described as blameless and upright, yet he lost everything. His family, his wealth, his health, and his friends were insisting that his suffering had to be punishment for something, and it wasn't. So I think the way that we relate this to ourselves in our own lives is that it's like a challenge for us to let go of the idea that suffering is always a direct result of our actions. And sometimes God allows trials for reasons beyond our understanding. Probably not just sometimes, probably a lot of the time. When we're going through hard things, we need to remember that it doesn't mean that God is punishing us. That makes me cry a little bit. Hang on. It is kind of like really wild that God didn't just give Job like these easy answers. God revealed his divine power to him, and that revelation gave Job peace, despite not getting the answers that he was looking for. I think one of the most relatable parts about Job's story is his honesty. He did not pretend to be okay. He cried, he questioned, and he lamented, and he went directly to God with it. And that is sometimes I think maybe we're afraid to do, or we just maybe don't even think of doing. We'll complain to everybody else, but we don't talk to God. So we need to make sure we're speaking directly to him. And even if we don't get the answers that we want, I think we are still getting answers. Another beautiful thing about Job, the person, was that even though he lost everything, he held on to his integrity. He didn't curse God, even when his wife urged him to. He didn't pretend to have answers or deny his pain. He remained honest and, most of all, faithful, which is awe-inspiring. Since Job's story ends with restoration, God giving back twice what he had lost, it's important to note that the restoration didn't erase Job's pain or minimize his losses. Instead, it shows that God can bring new blessings out of brokenness. And this isn't about expecting a reward for enduring hardship. It's about having hope that God can create beauty from ashes. I guess we can look at the story as kind of a blueprint for us for when life is unfair. We need to remember that suffering isn't always about sin, and that we should seek comfort not in quick fixes, but in God's presence. We have to be honest with God, and He'll welcome our questions. We have to trust that God's wisdom is greater than our understanding. And I know, even as I say all of it, I am acknowledging how incredibly difficult that is to do. So I love all of the lessons from the story of Job. However, I still have questions about the whole conversation between him and Satan and his allowing it. So maybe you can help me understand more. I would really appreciate that. Thank you in advance. And thank you for not only being on this journey with me, but helping me through it and allowing me to help you through it as well. So, okay, that's all I got. Bye.